What they won't tell you, we will. Come and Take It News.
Hi, this is Clint Milby with the Come and Take It News podcast, the very first podcast we've done, and thank you very much for tuning in. I want to go ahead and dive right into what's happening right now. The biggest story that's come out today, the FDA asked for 55 years to release studies that lead to the approval of the Pfizer COVID-19 shot. I guess the judge decided to go against that and said the FDA must release 500 pages per month of the study. And they did the first dump today. And I'm going to talk about that here in just a little bit. I am broadcasting from Burbank, California, right here on Victory Boulevard here in Burbank, California. And I'll talk a little bit about just a little bit before we get started with any news items about how I came to be in this position to where I'm actually like talking to you right now and doing a podcast and all of the other things that Come and Take It News has been doing, going to protest and doing interviews with folks that are at protest and, you know, doing prior to about 3 months ago, just more or less activism online on Facebook, social media, and things like that. And it started for me a couple of years ago. Actually, it started for me for the first, I guess that was the first time Bernie Sanders ran, and there was a primary against him and Hillary Clinton. Not the one that happened just last year, but the one, I guess, in 2016. And I was a gung-ho Bernie Sanders guy primarily because he talked about making the rich pay their fair share, start taxing or start putting tariffs on Chinese goods and imports, just as much as they tariff the United States of our stuff going over there, which I knew to be 100% needed because I was working in an industry where we manufacture cinematography gear, so cameras, lenses, and also some post-production, but primarily with camera and camera accoutrements. And one of the things was like support gear, things to, you know, mount light with or to be able to put the camera on your shoulder rigs, things like this. And one of the things was that American manufacturers would come up with all of this, like, you know, they would do all this R&D on this new like mount or this new rig or something like that. And what will wind up happening is because to stay competitive, they would have to contract a Chinese manufacturer to be able to have the thing made over there because they couldn't afford to make it here in the United States. So to be competitive with the people that were making similar products, that's what they had to do. And the entire industry was working that way. So they really didn't have a choice. And what would wind up happening is that they would make this product, they would patent it, and then they would, you know, while the patent was still pending, they would go and have, production made. They do a run of maybe, you know, this is just a small industry, so maybe like 250 units over in China. They would ship them back and everything like that. And then almost immediately, that manufacturer would start like making that same product and selling it themselves. And the United States companies have no recourse. The Chinese government doesn't give any consideration to United States patents. So they were essentially just like screw. And then the Chinese would sell it for pennies on the dollar. So to the point where, you know, they couldn't even like find any way feasible to sell it anymore, the original manufacturer. So this went on like on a regular basis to the point where people just stopped patenting their ideas because, or their products because it was really pointless. You know, before the ink was dry on the patent, the Chinese would already have been making it and selling it. And they tried certain things to the point where these companies were only allowed to sell to like eBay or Amazon, but they couldn't sell like through a big dealer like Sammy's Camera or B&H or something like that, if you're familiar with those. But it didn't make any difference, and it destroyed a lot of companies. So I was really aware of like the unfairness in regards to the way China operates and the way the United States operates. And Bernie Sanders was talking that game, and it sounded really, and he's the only one that was talking about it. And he talked about bringing manufacturing and starting to tax the hell out of American companies that were utilizing China for manufacturing, and to try to strong arm them or force them to bring products, manufacturing back to the United States. And that resonated with me because I felt like it was a big problem. I mean, going all the way back to prior to the crack epidemic in Compton, Compton was actually like military factories and automobile factories and stuff like that. And then all of that stuff got exported, and then the neighborhoods and everything like that just deteriorated. This was like in the 70s. So I was down with Bernie Sanders, and I have to be honest, healthcare for all seemed a very logical thing. I worked for a lot of companies, and if they were not forced to give us healthcare, they would just not do it. And or they would offer something that was like just minuscule, like some of you are probably familiar with something called the cafeteria plan, things like this. And I felt like, really, if it wasn't in law, some of these companies wouldn't adhere to it. So I was hearing him, and so I believed in it. And then I saw how they stole the primary, how Clinton stole the primary, and I'm very well versed in the Clintons stuff. We'll go into some of that later, but I just knew that there was no way I was going to be able to vote for Hillary Clinton. I knew that she was corrupt. I knew that she was corrupt to the core. I knew that she sold, nuclear secrets to the Chinese, actually let them like kind of wander around some of our nuclear facilities when Bill Clinton was president. And then, of course, anybody that's been like, in the truther movement knows that, the body counts of the Clintons, that, the suicides, that are into the hundreds, I think now, or something like that. It's a run-in joke. But I knew I didn't want this person to be president. It had absolutely nothing to do with her being a woman. It had absolutely everything to do with her being corrupt. And the other thing about Sanders is that he allowed no big donors. It was $27 from each individual member. That resonated with me. When I saw that they stole that primary, which they did, there was just no way. And then also the way that CNN and MSNBC and the mainstream media treated Bernie Sanders, like he would have these massive rallies. He's a populist, massive rallies. CNN wouldn't do anything to cover them, And these things were like huge, and they were all grassroots. It was all coming from the grassroots. There was so many people that were volunteering to make all this stuff happen. And after that, I was like really like distraught over it. And then it was the Democrats, like, the way that they responded to people that were Bernie Sanders supporters, like Blue No Matter Who, or like Sarah Silverman telling, everybody at the DNC that year just to get over it, quit acting like babies and all this type of thing. And there was just such a utter sense of betrayal. And then also this whole thing, like fall in line. I know, it's like they know it's crooked, but we're going to do it anyway. So fall in line and shut the fuck up. That's kind of like the way it was put to me. I don't respond well to that. And so anyway, Trump wound up winning, and I probably adhered to the lies of the mainstream media that Trump was this and Trump was that. I was bought into it. But then something happened. I worked on started producing a documentary about this guy, Ed Buck, who's a rich donor in West Hollywood. He's a rich Democrat donor, donates to everybody from like City Council of West Hollywood, to the mayor of LA, to the governor of California, to Hillary Clinton. And, he's got like pretty notorious pictures of him and Hillary Clinton and Adam Schiff. And this guy was a total meth addict and a meth dealer and was a murderer. He had killed like one black man in his house. His whole fetish was to inject them with dope. So I started covering on this documentary, and I started seeing like the link of corruption where all these Democrats were making excuses from this guy because he donated so much money. And even, after he killed somebody, some people washed their hands of him, but most people didn't. They kept that money until there was a second victim. And we went out to go cover. There was like a protest at the apartment building where this guy lived and everything like that. And the mainstream news covered it, but there was still like an air of fantasy in regards to like that everything was on the up and up, because it was the guy was notorious. He had been there since the 90s, and people had known of what he was and what he did and things like this, and they just turned a blind eye to it. As a matter of fact, it was like almost like he had deputies, because the sheriff's department is like essentially the police department for West Hollywood, that there was this, cooperation that they seemed to have. Whenever he would have a trick come over, he would just and they got out of hand because he injected him with too much meth. He would call the sheriff's department. They would come and pick the person up or rush them someplace else or something like that. So it was, there was a lot of things I was seeing that was just like, I can't get behind any of these people. It was like you were seeing like the true corruption of what was happening. And it was, prolific within the Democrats. And I was seeing it kind of in real time. But one of the things that was the most disturbing to me is that there was a woman who was kind of the ringleader. I don't say ringleader. She was the biggest supporter of someone trying to like bring fair law enforcement into all of this. Someone to bring justice into the situation. And she couldn't get anybody from like CNN or MSNBC or anybody like that to like cover. So, and she was a Democrat. So what does she do? She goes to Fox News. And so I started watching Fox at that time because I wanted to see her interviews. And then I started like staying around a little bit after her interviews. And this went on and on and on for a while, and finally, I just got to the point where it was like, I can't get behind these guys anymore, and then of course the 2019, the election comes up again, and, same song, second verse with Bernie Sanders. And I just was, except this time it was Joe Biden. And I was just like, there's absolutely no way. You saw that this guy had like, he had nothing. And then all of a sudden he was the candidate. It didn't make any sense. It was just all just backroom corruption. And then again, it was the people. The other Democrats were just like, blue no matter who. Blue no matter who. Shut up. What are you, a Trump supporter? Blue no matter who. And then, like in 2020, I started doing my taxes for 2019, and I started seeing, I'd actually had like the best year financially the year before. And I was like, we have to give credit where credit is due. This is due to Trump. Well, I deal with the sponsorship for a news website, and it's like these companies were giving more money underneath the Trump administration. And then I started to realize that a lot of the lies that were being told, because it was like I couldn't even watch CNN anymore. It just turned into like, everybody just talking about, Trump sucks. And Trump terrible? Trump is terrible. Trump is this. Trump is that. Blah, blah, blah. And it was just like, I can't even watch this. This is stupid. This is not news. This is just somebody just sitting around just hating on somebody, 24/7. I just can't do it anymore. And that for me was when things started to fall into place. Now, to be fair, I come from a conservative background. I became liberal probably in college, and I would say middle of the road up until, just around the time that Bernie Sanders, probably 2 years prior to him running. So, and you have to admit that during that time, some of the Republicans were pretty terrible. These were the rhinos many of them are gone now. Still have quite a few. But it changed the way that I saw the world and what was going on. And then it was just like at some point, everything just kind of clicked where it was just like, wow, these news streams are just broadcasting lies. It's just that's all it is. And light bulbs started to come on, an awakening started to happen. And I even started to examine my own personal life, and things, started to change for me, and my views started to change. And, you can't like disrupt a paradigm like that without disrupting other people in your life. And it's definitely done that for sure. And then of course the whole COVID business came into effect, and of course that's changed everything to the point now where, I can't, I don't know. The scales are off my eyes. The only thing I can do is like, I can never go back now. That's the thing about it. So I see full well what's going on, and it's a trip because I live in Hollywood or Burbank, so I live, in the entertainment industry. It's why I moved out here. It's, what I've always, wanted to do, since I was a kid. And although I haven't seen my name in lights, I'm living my dream and being part of. But that's the other thing, is that there seems to be almost an air of fiction within the industry for the last like couple of years. But I can't, and that everything has just become propaganda for what seems to be the CCP now, because they are so accountable to the CCP to be able to get their movies and TV shows into China, and to pick up that audience, to the point now where the CCP is giving notes on movies and what can be and what cannot be. And so the rest, as they say, is history, because that's where I'm at right now. And so when I think of like what I can do, what can I do to help spread the word. And I guess I'm still in that phase where I want, to try to still wake up as many people as I possibly can. Doing podcasts, because I've done them before for other entities, just seemed like a natural thing. It's been hard to do, to make the decision. I've, kind of beefed up some equipment and got everything kind of squared away. And to actually, go public with, my beliefs, because of fear of retribution from other people in the industry, because it is exactly the way most people think. 95% of the people are left, or I think maybe we might be surprised when some of the ones that are currently working in the industry actually come out of the closet. I personally think we ought to start dragging some of them out of the closet, because they just are so terrified that they're going to lose everything. But at this stage of the game, I think we all know that we're at a point right now where we're going to lose everything anyway. The world as we used to know it is gone. It's going away, but it's not coming back. And so it's time to take a stand. Everybody should take a stand. And the people with the power that believe as we do, that are patriots, it's time for them to stand up. And I know that there are many in the entertainment industry and still constantly like hiding. And I mean, it's more than just Mel Gibson and Kevin Sorbo. I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot that we won't, probably that will surprise me. They don't even utter it unto themselves, but they need to stand up. Everybody that sees what's going on in this world, it's time. At the end of the day, right now, they're killing kids, so this vaccine, jab, not vaccine, we're seeing now most of us knew that something was wrong with it, but it's almost impossible to believe like exactly how planned out this was. When we talk about Fauci being like Mengele, he's worse than Mengele if everything seems to be true. But even if you just look at his past, and that's key, a lot of people don't know that the majority of people in the 80s and 90s that died of AIDS didn't die of AIDS. They died of AZT, the drug that Fauci pushed through the FDA, that they were subscribing like Pez candy, calling it a miracle drug, calling it all of this. and everybody rushed to it because it was the only game in town, and people were dying and people were sick. And then AZT was almost like a chemotherapy. It just brought everybody's T cell counts down to the point where they had nothing. I had a friend that was on AZT and always talked about how it ruins his chances for survival. And he was teetering on like no T cells hardly at all, just enough to survive all the time. But it was the AZT that took him down, and he died. So there was a lot of people that died because of Fauci that for some reason, I don't know if it's because all of the people that were affected by it are dead now, or, you know, they have control of the media, so they just stifled it. Really, if you search Fauci AZT on Google, there's really only one serious source that comes up for it on Google, and it's an article from Spin magazine, I think in 1989, which really goes after Fauci big time and talks about, AZT and all of the damage that they did, and that they knew that it was killing people, but they didn't stop anyway. They were still pushing it out. And of course, if you've seen the movie Dallas Buyers Club, that's exactly what it's about, is that's the reason why he's going over to Mexico, is to get therapeutics, because AZT is what was killing everybody. And so he's done this before, but never to the scale of what he's done now. And of course, it's horrific. So what I wanted to talk about moving forward are some of the efforts that we're doing here in Los Angeles and what's actually kind of going on here in regards to our protest. The protesters, I think it was much more robust during the last election, and according to folks, because I've only been a part of it for a short while, it has kind of dwindled. And I don't know if that's because people have lost their enthusiasm or they've left the state, because a lot of people have left. They've just had enough. But things are starting to break down now, and we're seeing it. There was an article that came out recently in an independent news source here in LA called K News, and it said that that Eric Garcetti, our mayor, was actually in a fist fight at a city council meeting, and they had to call the police, and they had to call a fire department or a paramedic to come and treat, I guess. I don't know exactly how it went. They're not saying who it was involving, but it was definitely involving Garcetti. Because things are starting to fall apart now, as they have the mandates, and we're losing our fire department. There's so many firemen and men and women that are losing their jobs because they refuse to take the vax. There's so many police that we're losing, and sheriff's department, and that's coming from the defunding, and now on top of it, they're losing them to the vax, and we're seeing the ramifications of it. I was just listening to Police Scanner a little bit tonight, just in my area, and Burbank's relatively calm in comparison to the rest of LA County, or definitely in comparison to Hollywood and North Hollywood that surrounds us, and they are running crazy calls right now. Gunfire, assault and battery, single car accidents, just insanity. They're just one after the other. So it is, things are starting. We're starting to see the decay, and of course, it's clean here because our tax base in Burbank is Warner Brothers Studios and Disney Studios, and I think they pay to make sure that we're protected, even though some of our city council have tried to defund our police as well. You go over to Hollywood and it's like a third world country. It's like the images on the UNICEF commercials you used to see with the kids playing in filth and whatever, walking around. That's what it looks like. The sidewalks are completely filled with filth. People have to walk on the street because they can't walk on the sidewalk because there's tents and lean-tos and little shanties and stuff like that are built up. They come in, they clean them off, and then they're right back there the next day. And it is just insane. And it's not me being hard on homeless people right now, if you're homeless, there's actually a good time in LA. If you're not on drugs or whatever, they will put you in a house. They'll put you in a hotel because this is something that Garcetti had set up. But if you're a drug addict and you're on drugs, actively doing drugs, then you can't stay in these places. So these are the people that refuse to be housed, that continue to live outdoors because they're doing drugs. So these are mostly like drug addicts and people that are mentally ill and both, and it's unsafe. I tense up every time I have to go over to the city, and that's just kind of the way it is. And it's just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. It's almost as if the city council, the mayor's office, and the governor, the county board of supervisors especially, it's like they're trying to destroy Los Angeles. I can't believe that all of this is just accidental or bad management, because at some point in time, a check and balance should have caught some of this stuff, and it didn't. And it's been pushed through. And for instance, right now, the sheriff's department went online. Alex Villanueva, our sheriff, is only saving grace of LA County, went on to say that there's an MTA board now that that manages our buses and our light rail and our trains and everything like that, that have put out that they do not want the sheriff's department, or they don't want to pay law enforcement anymore to guard the trains and the buses and everything like that. That they want to use ambassadors is what they call them, people to go and try to get the homeless people to give social services. But the thing of it is that people utilize the mass transit for their kids, to use them to go to school. The kids use it to travel. School kids do. Elderly utilize them. Women that are being attacked and stabbed and shot, and this is happening on a regular basis and a daily basis. And the sheriff is stepped up, and he's guarding all of this stuff, because they used to be the sheriff's department used to control mass transit, or they were the law enforcement presence. And he stepped up and has started putting people into that situation. But the county board of supervisors and the MTA are coming against him on the whole thing. And that makes me think that they want things to go awry. They are trying to push us to the point of chaos, because it's proven that not having law enforcement there places everybody at risk, especially victims of crime. And you've got people that are mentally ill and drug addicts that are essentially, on a mobile homeless shelter, and it's an offense to the eye. It's an offense to the smell. They urinate all up in there and everything like that. And he was talking about it. He went and rode the trains and rode the buses over the course of the last several weeks. And I guess he spoke to riders and passengers, and got some feedback. And I guess he's supposed to go to the MTA tomorrow to try to convince them to start doing the right thing. But my point is that it seems as though they are trying to purposely implode LA County. And it's not just LA County, it's the entire state. And the big cities, of course, we're seeing it. And it just, when you see it like that, it's just because of a reasonable person will tell you that there's just no way they could be making this many mistakes. Yes, Democrat-run cities make mistakes, but this stuff is on purpose. They're making policy decisions that they know will negatively affect the status quo to a point of no return. And they're doing it with that intent. And in the meantime, all they're worried about is so-called racism, so-called equality, social issues. And that's where their focus is. And it's 100%. And that's where their money is. And that's where they're spending our money. And it's just gotten to the point now where, the basics are out the window. And so, when you talk, you probably heard about, what goes on, in the Twin Cities and Minneapolis and St. Paul, what's going on over there in regards to they're their city council and things like that, and how they're all, they went a hard left on defunding the police, and now they're realizing that they got real problems. They don't know what to do. These people don't seem baffled like that. They seem to be like they're okay with everything the way it's happening. So I don't know how much longer it's going to be safe to live here. And with the defunding of the police department here, and also the Vax mandates, they say that it's 30%, I think, of what they said the LAPD are unvaxxed still. The mayor's, had a first deadline was October 15th. Now they pushed it back to December 18th, but they're actively firing people right now. So if they were to lose 30% of the LAPD, even if they were to lose 20%, they're going to have to close stations. They're going to have to stop responding to calls. The crime is insane right now. Plus, we have a DA, Gascon, who will not prosecute crimes. It's like he has essentially said people could steal up to $950 without being charged. So that's why we have a so-called smash and grab, which is looting. I think the sheriff called it Gascon shoppers is what he called it, but it's not a joke, and people are like, oh, well, how much are things worth and everything like that. It's like a thing is somebody's time and effort. If I have stuff, if I'm a shopkeeper and everything like that, it took my effort and everything like that to purchase my inventory, to sell. And you come in and interrupt that. And they're like, oh, well, they're only hitting big stores. It's not true. They're going up and down Melrose and hitting small boutique stores. There's single owner businesses. And they're just coming in and just wiping them out and just giving them, just telling them F you and just walking out. And then the police don't even respond because they don't have the manpower to do it. They just tell the victims to come into the department to file a report. And, of course, nothing's done. And so we're starting to see Villanueva said last year that if they continue with, this defunding, that what we'll start to see is something resembling Mad Max World. Not the first, not the one that just recently came out, but the original Mad Max with Mel Gibson, the original one. And where it was just people just, marauders, just like pirates, just rolling around, just shooting, maiming, killing, stealing, just going nuts. And that seems to be what we're seeing right now. And again, it hasn't affected my personal area right here so much to the point where I, fear for my life going outside, but it's getting close. And there's only so much longer they can maintain the borders around the city. So essentially, you just go, I don't know how many streets, 4 or 5 streets up, maybe 6 or 7 major intersections up here in North Hollywood. Boom, you can tell, whole nother deal. We're seeing homelessness that resembles, especially in the underpasses, something that you used to only see in Skid Row downtown. With that in mind, and you couple that with what's happening with the Vax and everything, and I'm going to get into some of that now. But you couple that, then you're starting to see what appears to be. I mean, it is. It doesn't just appear to be that way. What the intent is, that could be argued all day long. But what it appears to be is that you've got a group of people that have set out to do something terrible to the rest of us, and they're doing it on purpose. And there is no other purpose for what could be being done to us other than to wipe us out, to bankrupt us, to cripple us, to destroy us. And that seems to be what is happening. I may be wrong. Possibly this is all a group of crazy coincidences of bad management. But at some point in time, bad managers get out. Bad managers get replaced. Bad managers tend to not have a bunch of other bad managers double down and reinforce what they're doing. So at the present time in LA County, we have one white knight, and that is Alex Villanueva, who is here to, he's the only thing standing in between us and I think full destruction. And I'm being 100% honest. He's the only guy that's there that's in power and standing between us and that is ensuring that the Constitution is still alive in LA County. And he's doing a wonderful job, but my God, the pressure and this is one person, and I'm sure he has a wonderful staff and people behind him, but this is one guy. We got to have more than that because it can't be all on the shoulders of one person. So hopefully we see more people rise to the occasion. Again, more people in power to come out, and start speaking. But at the end of the day, it might just be time to leave. It might just be time to turn, to fall back. My fear in falling back, and the reason why I'm staying around here is because I feel like if California falls, so will the rest of the country. Everything starts out west, every trend, culture, everything like that, it all comes from here. So when you start seeing things like things start happening in California, it's going to fall that way, and these people will be empowered and they'll push it out. You may say, "Oh, they'll never do that to Texas or whatever," but I'm from Texas. I recently visited Texas, a few months ago. I was there from May to June, almost to July, for almost 2 months. And I can tell you that Houston, Harris County is a mess. They got underage prostitution out in the street in the middle of the daylight. I've never seen anything like it in my life. It's horrific. That means that the mayor is involved and the chief of police is involved, and it's just decaying in a way that I was not prepared for. And I don't know if it's the same way in Dallas, but I know that Dallas is Democrat run. I know that San Antonio is Democrat run, and Austin definitely is. And the Democrats' goal is to get Texas. That's why when they had that power outage last winter in February, AOC came to Houston with $2 million from who knows where and gave it to the Democrats there in Houston. They made it look like they were handing it out to people, but the fact of the matter is I think most of it went to the Democrats' pockets. They want Texas big time, and it's possible because they cheat. So they cheat with the elections, and everybody is taking everything for granted. And that's the other thing. And if I could encourage people to do anything, get involved in your local elections. Know who your mayor is. Know who your city council members are. Know who your county board of supervisors are, because this is where all this stuff comes and gets carried out. Biden, Pelosi, all of these people, they're the big picture, But the way that this stuff gets carried out is the county board of supervisors and your city council and your mayors, okay? And for instance, like in Texas, the county that I grew up in, adjacent to Harris County, Fort Bend County, Democrats just came in and just raped the place. They took all positions in Fort Bend County. They took the sheriff, judges. I can't really speak to like all of the city council within the county. I mean, there's I think 4 or 5 major cities in Fort Bend County, but it's the fastest growing county, or at least it was the fastest growing county in Texas. So it's like, and now it's all blue. It's all blue. So you have Harris County, Fort Bend County, and that's how they're moving. And these people like move like ants, man. They like move into these positions. Same thing happened in Burbank. Burbank was mostly a conservative town. Now, not anymore. They came in and left. The Democrat Socialists came in, started up here, and they started, elections, social programming. They started something called the Burbank Bigots, which was where they had social media accounts on Twitter and also Instagram, where they were going on Facebook and seeing people that they were Republicans, conservatives, and they would take their stuff, they would take and dox them essentially online. And in LA and in California, it's the worst thing you could be called is a bigot. That's the reason why everybody is just like laying down for all this stuff, because they don't want to be called a bigot. They don't want to be called a racist. So they lay down for all this stuff because that's what they'll be called. That's exactly what they say. If you go against us, you're racist. So it could come to Texas. And I'm telling you, if California completely falls and all of the Republicans leave and they turn this place into what it seems like that they're trying to turn it into, Arizona, New Mexico's already blue. Texas, Louisiana, they'll go for anything in Louisiana. And, we start losing like major chunks of the country. It's the reason why I'm still here and the reason why I'm participating in the, in the protests here, trying to bring awareness, but, we're not seeing a level of protests like, what we're seeing in, other parts of the country and other parts of the world. Like in New York, they have major turnouts. For us, we get like 10, 15, 20. If we get like 30 people, that seems like a big deal. There was a pretty good march that we had like about 3 weeks ago, I guess, downtown. I don't know exactly what the head count on that whole thing was, but it was less than 1,000 people, probably more along the lines of like 300-400 or something like that. And I'm not downplaying the effort of the people that were there, but really we need bigger numbers. That's what we need, are the big numbers. So it's, and I'm curious, is it people are not awake yet, or they just don't feel like they have what it takes to get out in the streets, or they're embarrassed, or they don't want to be called a bigot or whatever. But, we're kind of like past that. And these are protests for medical freedom, to end the vax mandates. Yesterday, Eric Garcetti announced that they're going to start enforcing the vax mandates in restaurants. I don't know who's going to get to do it. Alex Villanueva, the sheriff, said that they're not going to participate in any of this stuff. They're too spread too thin, dealing with like actual violent crime, which is up 70% from last year. I don't know. It could, maybe the LAPD, maybe they're going to use the health department, maybe they're going to use some snitch squad or something like that, or they're going to use private people. I know in Burbank they hired an outside firm that was kind of like Airmark or something like that. That wasn't Airmark, but it was something, a company that was like that, to hand out tickets to people that didn't have masks on. They spent $300,000 of our budget. So if you were walking around outside without a mask, they would like give you a ticket, and it's outside of law enforcement. So all it does is like jack up your credit, like if you don't pay it. So, and they can't arrest you. They can't like come after you or whatever, but they try to hit you in the pocketbook. So that's, we don't know exactly how that's going to play out, but it's going to make it hard. There's a lot of restaurants, not a lot, but I don't know, but there are some restaurants that are out there that that haven't been participating in any vax mandates, or even mask mandates, but it's going to become really hard on them now, because the result of it, I think, are a big fine, or they take away their business license, or their health department comes in and shuts them down, things like this. So that's kind of like where we're at. And again, there's resistance for all this stuff, but it just hasn't stopped things. They're still moving forward. My concern here is if they have to get rid of so many police, if they have to get rid of so many nurses, if they have to get rid of so many firemen, which they're firing them right now. It's happening right now. Every day I see there's an organization called Firefighters for Freedom, and they give daily updates on like what's going on with their lawsuits against the city for firing these people wrongly. We have to have people to replace them. It takes a long time to train like these people. 12 o'clock. It takes a long time to train these people. And so I guess in New York, when they got rid of all of the nurses that were unvaxxed, they brought in the military or the guard, or I guess it was the National Guard, to fill those positions. So if they do the same thing in Los Angeles, that's a whole different ballgame. That might be what their plan is. I don't know. But once you have military that are acting as police, then all bets are off, because essentially that's martial law, and that means your constitutional rights don't mean anything anymore. The key marker here for me, I'm paying attention to what's going on in Australia, and I'll be talking about that a lot in different episodes. In Australia, I think it was 3 months ago, is when they started making the truckers, or they call them truckies, have injections and have to have a Vax card to be able to go across state lines within Australia. And there was a big pushback on that whole deal. And then they kind of backed off of it and acted like, kind of gaslit and acted like, hey, we weren't serious about that, But now it's come back into play, I think. And I think now everybody's gotten used to it. It's happening. Cut to 3 months later, where they're at right now. They're going in the Northern Territory and to the indigenous people, and they are leaning on them hard. I've heard rumors that they could be like force vaccinating people there, holding them down and injecting them. But what it looks like they're doing is that they're taking groups of people that are unvaccinated and sticking them into camps. And that's a real deal. I know everybody's going, oh, it's not actually happening. It's happening. It's happening. I think it's happening on the Gold Coast already. They're actively building these facilities. And from the sky, if you see them, they look just like the flyovers they did in World War II over Auschwitz. It looks exactly the same thing. It's chilling. And they take you in there, and I guess you stay in there, and they... I haven't actually heard, like, do you walk out? Are you able to leave without being vaccinated? It would seem like that would be kind of pointless as to what they're doing, but I'm not clear on that. But I know for sure that something is happening to the Aboriginal people up north. They're panicked. They're all over social media right now. They're begging for help. They're asking for international intervention. But unfortunately for them, nobody's coming. The people that would intervene are all on board with this. And that's the thing about it, talking about, the vaccines, is that the vaccine mandates, and this is not a vaccine, it is an injection of something that appears to be poison. I don't care like what they say that it's helping people. I don't see that it's helping anybody, especially when people that are double vaxxed are still getting it. Like our mayor, Eric Garcetti, who was in Scotland and actually got COVID even after he was double vaxxed, and allegedly he came back to the United States and got a booster after his COVID symptoms had cleared up. I don't know, you believe what you want to believe. If you look deep enough, you can see that people are dying left and right of heart failure, heart attacks. They're trying to normalize that kids have heart attacks, even though that's completely crazy. The symptom or the side effect of the vax, myocarditis, is so minimal in children, but now it's becoming like a kind of a common thing, and they're trying to normalize it. And I don't know what to say about it, other than I don't see how it is what it is. It's genocide. It's what it is. No matter, even at this point in time, if their intentions were actually good, they needed to back off of it because the side effects were horrific. But since they know the side effects they're trying to conceal the side effects. They're trying to hide them, and they're moving forward with it, and they're pressing down on it, and they're making it illegal not to be vaccinated. Then they must be in on it. And that's my point, is that in regards to Australia, nobody's coming because everybody's on board with this. This is happening in every country, except for maybe African countries and India. That those seem to be the people that, especially Indians, are resistant towards it. Somebody pointed out the other day that in Africa, one of the things is because of malaria is so common, ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are over the counter there. So people get symptoms, they take that, they take the therapeutics. And that's the reason why they're not having the death rate that everybody else is having. Plus, none of them are taking the vaccine either. So no one's coming for Australia. No one's coming for us either. No one's coming. God may be coming. And I wish he'd come soon, but it's on us. It's on us. We are the ones that can change. We're the only ones. We're our own savior. We're not our own savior. We're our own heroes in this situation. No one's going to come and rescue us. We have to do the rescuing ourselves. And that means like not going along with what's happening. And this is the thing that people need to think of. And I've said this in protests. That moment, when I was in college, we had a visiting professor from Temple University who was a Holocaust survivor who taught a class on the Holocaust, and I just ran to it. Got in. It was only 2 sections, so I was really excited. I got in, and it was interesting because the guy he was an American. He was a foreign exchange student through some sort of foreign exchange with the United Methodist Church. And how unlucky, right? And he chooses like a German host family. He goes over there as soon, like about a month before Hitler ascends to power. And then he was stuck. Anyway, so he was like a kid, like when all this was happening, but he had a great understanding, of what Nazism was. And, it was a blend of nationalism and religion is the way that he called it. And, when you talk to the Wokians that are out there, they seem to be hopped up on like some sort of religion. Like they're just, their mind is like a Jonestown person, that's the way that they seem. They say nonsense. They say things that are not true. And it's like the part of their brain that allows them to have critical thought has been turned off, and they are just like living by the faith of their leaders right now, and they're taking it all in. And that seems to be like what's happening with these folks. But the thing about the thing about the Nazis is that, the one reason why I wanted to take that class was I wanted to find out, because I'd known about that uncles that were in World War II. My grandfather was in World War II. I wanted to know, what was it? Why couldn't the German people, why didn't it snap for them that what was happening, and why didn't they rise up against this guy, Why were they so complicit? Not even complicit. They were enthusiastic about what was going on. At what point in time did their brains get so broken that they couldn't see what was happening? And they would try to say that the Germans didn't know what was happening and things like this, but that's a lie. They knew what was happening because they had to extract all of the Jews from the cities first, So, and many of the Germans were allowed to live in the homes take over the shops of the Jews that had been sent to ghettos in Poland. So they knew what happened. They went along with what happened. And it was because they were drunk on this religion, nationalism, type of thing that was that the Nazis were selling. And that's where I think that we're at that point right now. Well, we're past it, but it's a lot different than what's happening here, but not really. People still have a choice right now. They can choose a different path. I think for Americans specifically, the choice is their children. God has put this choice before them. If you allow your kids to take this injection, and even by default, because they've already said that if they inject the kid in school, that's because you sent them to school. That gave them consent. That was consent. That was your consent for sending them to school. You knew what was going on, so you consented to it, which is crazy because I thought you had to get a permission slip just to go to on a field trip. Not in this case, though. If a parent, even by default, like I said, sending their kid to school, they allow them to be injected, there's no help for their soul. There's no help for their life at that point. They have sacrificed their child for their own sense of well-being so that they can maintain their stature within the community, so that they don't look like an anti-vaxxer, so that they don't look like a racist, so that they don't look like a Trump supporter, whatever it is, that they don't want. But it's about their ego. It's about their ideas of their standing within the community. And so this is a big test for them. And I pray to God that some of them start taking it seriously, because it's not going to turn out well for them. And I don't know of any worse mistake than sacrificing your child and realizing after the fact that you did it. Ending any relationship is hard, and you have regrets afterwards. But to end it, the relationship with you and your child that way because of cowardice, I don't think there's any coming back. I think your soul is damned at that point. I don't see how. I don't see any hope for the person. So I'm hoping that people start to take the right choice, and that's why it's important that we try to reach as many people that have children right now as possible with this. The parents, they got to know. And, you know, it's possible that they don't know, but, you know, we've got to try. Those are the ones, the average people that are out there that are single or they don't have kids or something like that, they're on their own at this point. If you're turning your back on the truth and you haven't done anything about it now, you've been confronted with the truth, you haven't taken the time to consider it in your mind and in your heart, then there's really nothing we could do for you. But if we could wake up a few parents, that's something to do. That's something worthwhile. And I think that's really where we're at. And I just don't know what else to say about that. It's a horrific idea, what we're living through right now. It's a terrible thing. Anyway, so I encourage you, get involved in your city council. Get involved. Go find out. Start with the first things first. Find out who represents you in the city council. Find out who your mayor is. A lot of people don't even know who their mayor is. You live in a small town or a medium-sized town, you might not even know. Get involved. Going into an election year, a lot of these seats and things like that are going to be available. I talk to so many people out there, and I'm trying to encourage them. Run for whatever. Run for dog catcher. It doesn't even matter. You know, get involved in your election process immediately. You know, I mean, hell's bells. If you have the chutzpah to do it, then go and get into U.S. Congress. Do it. You know, run for it. Doesn't matter. Do it. That's what we have to do right now. We have to start taking back our governments back, and we have to start doing it immediately. Immediately. There's just no time to waste in this whole deal. Number one, running against some of these people is going to put intense pressure on them. Pressure makes them make mistakes. And when people start making mistakes, they become vulnerable. And that way we can get some of these people out of office even sooner before the election. But this whole thing, I don't like to talk in front of folks. I'm shy. That's not the type of thing I like to do and everything like this. You know what? Is that what you're going to tell God? You know, I mean, is that what you're going to tell yourself when you look? It's like, my goodness, you know, what could have changed? And, you know, the people I'm talking to right now, if you love God, if you're a moral and upright person, meaning that you seek to do the right thing on a regular basis, and that's the way that you've lived your life, especially if you've been brought up that way, and that is who you are, or if you've had a come to Jesus moment somewhere along your life, you're recovering addict, recovering alcoholic, and you've got some time underneath your belt, and you've changed your life. We need you. We need you to come start right now, start getting into your local government and start pressing those buttons. Hell, you could even issue recalls for people, your mayor, your city council people and stuff like that. You can issue recalls for these people, and you can get into office sooner. You don't have to wait till next year, or you don't have to wait until like the election in November. You can move faster. I encourage our young men and young women, if you can, without having a vax mandate, put on you, get involved in law enforcement. Texas is looking for volunteers to help them with the border crisis right now. There are things to do. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be done right now. If you have a voice and you have the means and you have a way, get involved, start a podcast, start building a following, of like-minded individuals, especially if you can consolidate them within a certain geographic area. That way you can come in and start taking over some of these offices, and it's key. And any hang-ups, any childhood fears or lack of ambition, or I don't even know how to put it, but anything that's holding you back from doing something like that. If you have an instant excuse when I say run for office, whatever that is, you need to put that to the side and think about what's important right now, because it could be you that changes the tide, and we have to all start doing our part. That's the key. And I'm sorry, sit on Facebook is not doing it. Most of the time, the people that you're fighting with are not even people. They're bots. It's an AI algorithm bot that's got pre-programmed things to say, and all it's doing is keeping you tied up in something that's not even real. It's not worth it. Put it to the side. It is not worth it. But start finding some sort of way to get involved. Find out who's on your school board, for God's sakes. You've got to get into that school board. We found out that the school board in Burbank has been totally infiltrated by insane communists, total insane communists that, want your children to have sex changes before they hit puberty, that want your children to become rats, to start ratting you out, ratting every other person out and stuff like that, just the same way that they did the Hitler Youth, And these are insane people, and they're in power, and they're in charge, and they are loving it. And we need those folks gone. 9 times out of 10, anybody that's like that, they got some sort of skeletons in their closet. Hell, they might even have live bodies in their closet. That's the thing about it, is that they're moral degenerates. So they are actively doing harm. At the present day, we need to flesh these people out, get them gone. And the way to do that is to have God's people taking leadership positions. Again, no matter how small, it doesn't matter. You live in a town, 1,500 people in the chickens, doesn't matter. Get in there, be mayor of that town, be on the city council of that town. It's boring, it's not sexy, but do it anyway, Because at the end of the day, these orders that are coming from DC are carried out by these people. These are the foot soldiers of Satan, essentially, that are out there. And we need to get them out while we still have a chance, because the door is closing right now. The thing of it is once the Democrats come into an area, then the elections are changed forever. They're cheating now. That's the way it is. So once they dominate an area, the chances of ever having a fair election after they're dominating that area are slim and none. Slim and none. So I hope somebody hears me on that, because that's what's going to save us. Definitely going to make a difference, in helping to take back our country, because right now we're at war. And I think that's the one thing that everybody has to get into their minds. And I know I'm running long here, but that's the one thing that everybody needs to get into their minds. We are at war. This is not... That's not a conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy fact, okay? 2 years ago now, China released a bioweapon, and they released it onto the world. They released it into the United States. China got involved, and they rigged our presidential election and many other elections. China has operatives like Joe Biden, who has been on the CCP's payroll for decades now, his son being the broker for all that, and many, many other people. We have the enemy's foot soldiers essentially, taking our power right now. They're, if you know anything about history in World War II, they're kind of like the Vichy Nazis, or the French and Vichy were complete turncoats, and they turned their country over to the Nazis and collaborated with them. That's essentially what we have here. We have collaborators that are in charge right now. And we've got to get them gone. And they're from everything, like I said, from dog catcher all the way up to the president of the United States right now. We got to get them gone. We got to get them out of here. COVID was released on us. It was allowed to be released on us. The person that is supposed to be saving us from all this actually invented the COVID and the vaccine, which was invented like 2 years prior to the COVID being released. So all of this stuff is out there. Glenn Beck has a great documentary, or it's like a 2-hour special that he did on Fauci. It's on the Blaze, but I think probably it's been like circulated. Best place to find it is on Rumble or BitChute. You can find it there for free if you're not a member of Blaze. And look at what Fauci is and what he's done. And that's not even the tip of the iceberg. I'm going to get into some of that here in just a second. But on a local note, I wanted to mention that there are a lot of protests that are coming up in LA, but there is a freedom protest for children. This is specifically regarding child abuse and child trafficking, sex trafficking. This is going to be on December the 11th on the 2021 from 1 to 3 p.m. at the Chinese Theater in downtown Hollywood, right there on Hollywood Boulevard. Again, it's going to be coming 1 to 3. Bring your signs, bring your flags, bring your bullhorns, bring comfortable shoes, and just the bullet points that they have here. It's a freedom protest for our children in human trafficking, unmask our children, because, you know, they always say, well, dentists can wear a mask and nurses wear a mask. You know what? But a brain that is still developing, that is still actually being made, needs more oxygen than an adult person. So yeah, putting the mask on children is child abuse. It's affecting their development. Stop the vaccine mandate. Yeah, of course. Stop critical race theory in schools. Can't even get into that right now. But yep. Abolish Planned Parenthood. Defund CPS, because CPS is behind a lot of this trafficking. You don't even have to look hard to find that one. People have known about that for years. And child sex trafficking, you know, that's the thing, is we've got to bring an end to it, and people are in denial that it's happening. But, you know, one of the things about this Ghislaine trial is that it's all coming to surface, even though the judges try to say that you can't like talk about the names, you can't name drop or anything like that. It's sensational because it'll shock people too hard. First day of the trial, Twitter CEO quits. They fired Walmart CEO. There was 2 or 3 others that were fired, like or quit, like the first day of the trial. Maybe it's a coincidence, but I don't think so. I know that Jack Dorsey was a frequent flyer on the Lolita Express, so I'd be surprised if it didn't have something to do with that. And these details are coming out. They can contain what's happening right now. You know, the judge could say whatever. You know, the fact of the matter is that, you know, no one believes it because Schumer gave her a position, I guess, at Biden's behest on the federal circuit court, so she got a bump. And, you know, which should be a mistrial at this point. But my point is that it's all coming out. So get out in front of this, start being part of this fight, because that's we have a chance to win this. And I will say this as a warning to people right now. There are things that are coming out on social media that are horrific. I saw something tonight on Instagram. I'm not even going to repeat like where it came from, but somebody I know, and they had a video of this kid looked like somebody beat the shit out of him in his face. You know, he's like 9 years old, maybe younger, blood all over his face, coming out his nose, eyes swole, crying, screaming, and being yelled at by somebody off camera, and he had to take off his clothes. And they had it blurred out and everything, but they didn't have, all of that horror show like blurred out. And I almost had to throw up. I swear to God, I just... And I've never seen anything like that. I'm sure it's probably been taken down by now, but I've never seen anything like that like make its way across social media before. It was almost as disturbing as, some of these people that put up like slaughterhouse footage. Peter's real big on that, or dogs being killed or something like that. It was along those lines, except this was a human being and a little kid to boot. So steel yourself and be prepared. You're going to be inundated with images of this stuff as this Ghislaine Maxwell trial continues to come out. This stuff is going to start leaking out, and it's going to filter its way down to people. And one thing I can tell you is when you do see it, because some people are they're so shocked and terrified by it all that they want to go out and hurt somebody or something like that. Don't do it. Don't do it. Sometimes you don't even know like where this material comes from. You know, it could be something that was made, but even then, we're not about vigilantism here. You know, we're not going to do that. You know, we are going to bring justice in a way that was something similar to what happened in Nuremberg, and that's how we'll be doing it. And unless God's hand is on it, and He strikes them down. But I think that, you know, all of this stuff has to come out in trial. All of this stuff has to come out. We need to stand and look at it and see it and be shocked and horrified and sickened by it, so that we make sure that it never happens again.
What they won't tell you, we will. Come and take it new.